Crete, May 1941. The island was by all accounts lovely, rocky, sun-drenched, and currently serving as the reluctant sanctuary for the remnants of Allied forces who had just conducted the most frantic, undignified evacuation since Moses left Egypt. They were not so much a fighting garrison as a collection of tired men nursing a collective organizational hangover. In a makeshift command post carved into the hillside near Suda Bay, Brigadier General Bernard Barney Smith adjusted his collar. Barney was by nature a man who preferred polished brass and predictable supply lines. Crete offered neither. His current HQ smelled faintly of damp wool and existential dread. He was staring at a sheet of paper so top secret it could cause spontaneous combustion in a moderately loyal subaltern. It was the latest Ultra Decrypt, freshly delivered by a signals officer, whose face looked suspiciously like he had been running from a very large, angry bee. "Read that last bit again," Lieutenant Barney requested, his voice a low, distressed rumble. Lieutenant Davies, sweating profusely despite the cool stone bunker, cleared his throat. "Yes, sir." Quote, "The main airborne force, consisting of elements of the Gruber West, will commence their drop at precisely 07:15 hours, May 20th. Key landing zones are the dried riverbed adjacent to Maleme Airfield and the olive groves immediately to the south. Paratrooper kit list specifies 2 grenades, 1 Luger P-08, and regrettably, only the substandard lemon-flavored schnitzel ration for breakfast." End quote. Barney sighed, rubbing his temples. Substandard lemon-flavored schnitzel, that is. The sort of detail that keeps a man up at night. It speaks to a profound lack of respect for the troops. And here we are, knowing every minute detail of their invasion plan, right down to their appalling choice of seasoning, Sir Davies ventured. The intelligence is unprecedented. We know the exact time, location, and composition of the largest airborne assault ever attempted. We know their objectives, their landing patterns, and General Student's overly ambitious preference for widespread dispersal indeed, Barney muttered, tapping the map. They are sending their Fallschirmjäger, the very elite of the Nazi shock, troops straight into our pre-sighted kill zones. It is like being handed the test answers before the exam. He leaned back, the victory already tasting like ash. "The test answers are useless, Davies, if we only have 2 pencils and the ink has run out." The harsh reality of their situation was the cruel irony layered over the perfection of Ultra. The Allies had been forced to abandon nearly all their heavy artillery vehicles and the bulk of their stored ammunition back in Greece during the 1000's panicked retreat. They were defending a vital strategic island with small arms determination and a crushing, terrifying lack of spare bullets. They had enough to fire exactly 1 decisive salvo. After that, it was knives and prayers. "Have we received the promised shipment of 3-inch mortar rounds?" Davies Barney asked, knowing the answer already. Davies winced. "Naval reports indicate the supply convoy encountered some difficulty off the coast of Tripoli, sir. They managed to save the rum ration, but the ammunition went down with the lighter vessel. Also, the shipment of proper tea, Earl Grey, as requested, appears to have been replaced by 20 crates of rather dusty instant coffee substitute." Barney closed his eyes, a flicker of pure, unadulterated rage passing over his features. Instant coffee. My God, I am expected to defeat Goring's entire airborne division fueled by instant coffee. He pointed to the hill overlooking the Maleme Airfield. This was the linchpin, Hill 107. Manned by the highly effective, utterly pragmatic soldiers of the New Zealand 22nd Battalion, it was the perfect observation and firing platform. "Ensure Colonel Campbell understands the stakes," Barney commanded. "Tell him we have 1 shot. Make it count. Tell him to conserve the digestive biscuits. They are now officially a strategic asset." Above the Aegean Sea, dawn, May 20th. The massive, lumbering fleet of Luftwaffe transport planes was an audacious sight. a swarm of mechanical locusts carrying the terrifying promise of German efficiency. Inside one of the planes, breathing the stale, oily air, sat Major Hans Headliner Gruber. Gruber was the very picture of the Fallschirmjäger ideal. Tall, sharp-featured, and radiating a confident, almost theatrical, disdain for gravity. He was the commander of a key glider-borne group tasked with seizing the Maleme perimeter. A beautiful day for history, isn't it, Lieutenant? Gruber boomed over the engine noise, adjusting his harness. Lieutenant Schmidt, pale and clutching his parachute, Cord managed a shaky nod. Ja, Major. A magnificent demonstration of the Luftwaffe's superiority? Gruber scoffed, gesturing out the window at the vast armada. It is beyond superiority, Schmidt. This is artistry Goering has done. What the Army calls impossible. We bypass the tedious nuisance of the Royal Navy. We simply drop in, seize the island by lunch, time and offer the British a humiliating cup of tea before we move on to bigger targets. Gruber was a true believer in the doctrine of aerial shock and awe, and more importantly, in the publicity it generated for the Luftwaffe. General students only. Concern Gruber continued smoothing the crisp creases of his uniform was that the invasion might be too easy. He worried that the defenders might panic and simply run before we even finish our descent. It wouldn't make for a very dramatic newsreel, would it? Schmidt laughed weakly. Unlikely, Major. The British are known for stubbornness, if nothing else. Stubbornness is merely unpreparedness dressed in a uniform. Schmidt Gruber corrected him dismissively. Our intelligence suggests the Allied defenses are scattered, undersupplied, and probably manned by Australians, which is almost cheating. Today we secure Crete. Tomorrow, secure Goering a larger office. Gruber checked his pistol, his only immediate weapon. The Fallschirmjäger operated on a bizarre, overconfident principle. Their heavy weapons, rifles, machine guns, were dropped separately in large canisters, trusting that the elite troopers would land, retrieve them quickly, and then commence the slaughter. It was a tactic predicated on absolute surprise and non-existent resistance. A tactic that, thanks to the lemon-flavored schnitzel Decrypt, was about to become the most embarrassing tactical failure of the early war. Prepare for jump, Gruber announced, his voice ringing with eager anticipation. Let us show these islanders what true efficiency looks like. Maleme Airfield. Perimeter 0715, Sergeant Major. MacLeod of the New Zealand 22nd Battalion was not a man easily impressed. He was currently dug into a shallow trench in the olive groves south of the airfield, chewing slowly on a piece of hardtack that had the texture and flavor of dried masonry. Beside him, Private Jones peered through a thicket of scrub. Sarge, I can hear them now. Sounds like 1,000 angry washing machines that will be the transport planes. Private MacLeod replied, dry as the Cretan dust. Keep your head down. Remember what the Brigadier told us, wait until they look like particularly slow-moving geese. The air raid that preceded the drop was suitably terrifying, a deafening overture of bombs and strafing runs. The ground shook. Debris flew, but the defenders, perfectly placed according to the Ultra data, simply waited it out. Then came the silence, followed by the sight. It was a magnificent, surreal panorama. The sky filled with parachutes, hundreds, then thousands descending with deliberate slowness toward the predetermined landing zones. The Fallschirmjäger, the supposedly unbeatable airborne shock troops, looked for all the world like a vast, brightly colored display of laundry caught in a strong breeze. MacLeod did not even raise his voice. All right, lads. They are perfectly centered in the grid we marked out yesterday. Just like the nice British man in London said they would be. Aim for the silk. It is less likely to move. The ensuing moments were less a battle and more an execution. The New Zealanders opened fire simultaneously. This was not scattered resistance. This was a well-organized, pre-sighted killing field. Rifles cracked, Bren guns chattered, and the few serviceable mortars they possessed rained down on the dry riverbed where the German gliders were crashing. The noise was instantaneous and horrifying. Parachutes bloomed crimson, and collapsed men still dangling 50 feet above the ground were stitched by machine gun fire. The sheer vulnerability of the descending troops, combined with the pinpoint accuracy afforded by perfect intelligence, turned the invasion into a Slaughterhouse. Major Gruber, descending into the olive groves, realized the catastrophic error the instant he saw a tracer round zip past his ear. Ambush! He roared a useless, breathless cry. This is supposed to be empty. He hit the ground hard, tumbling through the rough terrain. Scrambling to his feet, he drew his Luger, only to find himself confronted by a furious, bearded Cretan civilian wielding a farming implement that looked suspiciously like a medieval flail. Gruber fired wildly, dispatching the civilian. But confusion was total. His comrades who landed nearby were in far worse shape. They were running through a hail of bullets, trying desperately to reach the scattered supply canisters marked with yellow and red stripes. The rifles! Get the rifles! A German sergeant screamed before being cut down mid-sentence. The spectacle of the most elite troops in the world trying to fight a pitched battle armed only with pistols and their own substantial egos was tragicomedy gold. They were outgunned, outmaneuvered, and utterly exposed. McLeod watched the whole cluster of Germans successfully reach a canister, only to be obliterated by a single, perfectly placed mortar round, just as they began fumbling with the lock. Efficiency, Sarge. Private, Jones murmured, reloading his rifle with a grim satisfaction. Absolute efficiency. By noon, the German air superiority had temporarily won the battle for the sky, but the battle for the ground was a catastrophe for the invaders. Hundreds of bodies littered the landscape, and the surviving Fallschirmjäger were pinned down, utterly demoralized, and running critically low on bullets for their pistols. They had failed to seize any of their primary objectives. Group West, Gruber's section was decimated, clinging to a tenuous toehold in the dry riverbed, barely alive. Barney Smith received the news with reserved elation. A masterpiece. A perfect defense. Goring's folly is confirmed. Students' arrogance has been punished. He clapped his hands together, then immediately sobered. Now, Davies, what is the current ammunition expenditure? Davies looked. Hale again, clutching a clipboard that seemed to weigh heavily in his hands. Sir, the 22nd Battalion at Maleme performed, spectacularly achieving a confirmed kill ratio of 8-1. However, in doing so, they have consumed approximately 93% of their remaining reserve for rifles and Bren guns. Barney stared at the clipboard as if it had personally insulted his mother. 93%.
Is critical, sir.
And the mortar shells, sir? They expended the last 7 of the requested 10 rounds we managed to get from Alexandria. They report great success, but 0 remaining high explosive capability. Barney slumped into his chair. So we have won the battle for the island today, Davies. But we have simultaneously ensured we cannot fight for it tomorrow.
We don't have the bullets to fight for it.
We have enough bullets left for perhaps 15 minutes of light skirmishing, 3 angry shouts, and a very intense staring contest. The enemy was defeated, crippled, and broken, but they were not gone. And now, the defenders were essentially empty-handed. Maleme, perimeter, twilight. The survivors of Group West were huddled together, exhausted and terrified. Major Gruber, nursing a deep gash on his arm, spat dust from his mouth. He had watched 3 attempts to retrieve supply canisters fail each time, resulting in more casualties. They knew, he whispered hoarsely to Schmidt. They were waiting for us. This was not luck. This was planned. We must retreat, Major Schmidt insisted. We can barely hold this position. We are surrounded by infuriated New Zealanders and peasants with pitchforks. Retreat is for the fuck. Army Lieutenant Gruber snarled, ignoring the pain in his arm. The Luftwaffe does not retreat. We are simply reorganizing our perimeter with a greater focus on aggressive forward planning. They were clinging precariously to the far western edge of the airfield, entirely unable to push the New Zealanders holding the crucial high ground of Hill 107. Gruber knew if they could not take that hill. By dawn, the mission was a total failure. Allied HQ, late night. Barney Smith was standing over the map illuminated by the feeble light of a single lantern. Colonel Campbell of the 22nd Battalion was on the radio, his voice crackling with fatigue and controlled frustration. "Sir, we are holding Hill 107. The line is firm, but my men are exhausted, and, crucially, sir, we are down to 10 rounds per man. I have had to order them to prioritize the use of rocks over actual bullets." "I understand the predicament," Colonel Barney said, running a hand through his hair. His brain was clouded by stress and the faint bitterness of instant coffee substitute. The Germans were pulverized, right? They had taken enormous casualties. They could not possibly mount a serious counterattack tonight. Logistically, Barney had a single choice. He needed to redistribute the tiny supply of remaining ammunition from the Western Front to the more vulnerable eastern sectors, Colonel Barney said slowly, making a decision driven by logistical panic rather than sound tactical judgment. "I need you to pull back the bulk of your force from 107. Withdraw to the defensible perimeter at the village of Laciana. Leave a very light screening force, maybe a platoon, to maintain the illusion of presence, sir." "Withdraw from 107? But that hill controls the entire airfield." "I know what it controls," Colonel Barney snapped, immediately regretting the tone. "But if you use your last ammunition holding that bare piece of rock against an enemy that might not even attack, you doom the darkness to rest your men and reorganize the meager supplies we have left." Silence from the other end. "Understood, sir," Campbell finally agreed, though his voice was thick with disbelief. "We are withdrawing from the hill. We will leave the screening force in place, but they will not last an hour if the Germans even look at them." Barney cut the connection, his heart pounding. He had gambled the entire operation on the assumption that Goring's elite troops were too devastated to seize the single most vital piece of real estate on the island. He looked at the map again, seeing the empty contour line of Hill 107. "A temporary tactical withdrawal, Davies," he muttered defensively. "A necessary evil to address the severe tea shortage." Maleme Airfield, dawn, May 21st. The light screening force left by the New Zealanders had lasted precisely 45 minutes before Major Gruber's group discovered them and overwhelmed the small position through sheer, desperate savagery. Gruber, limping slightly, but radiating renewed purpose, stood atop Hill 107 as the sun rose. The view was breathtaking. He could see the entire airfield, pristine and completely undefended. He stared down at the deserted landing strip, then back at his surviving, exhausted men. They retreated. Gruber breathed, unable to comprehend the gift. "They massacred us yesterday, and then they retreated?" "Perhaps they ran out of courage," Major Schmidt suggested. Still bewildered, Gruber shook his head, a chilling smile spreading across his face. "No, Lieutenant. They ran out of sense. We took the most glorious beating in the history of the Luftwaffe yesterday. But they abandoned the prize." He did not waste another second. He scrambled down to the airfield and pulled out his Radio Athens. "This is Group West. Maleme Airfield is secured. Repeat. Maleme is clear for landings. Send the mountain troops. Send everything. Get us the bloody rifles." Within minutes, the first Junkers Ju-52 transport plane carrying reinforcements and heavy supplies banked sharply and roared in for a landing. It hit the tarmac hard. From the Allied perspective, the sound of the first German transport landing was like a physical punch. Barney Smith heard the noise from his HQ bunker and knew instantly what monumental organizational blunder he had committed in his search for supply parity. "Davies, what is that sound?" "Sir, that appears to be the sound of a very large German transport plane successfully landing on the airfield we accidentally abandoned 3 hours ago. Impossible, I ordered the New Zealanders to hold the strategic high ground until the logistical situation improved. Sir, you ordered them to pull back so we could redistribute the 3 boxes of ammunition we have left. Barney grabbed his cap. Right, full counterattack. Immediately, we must retake 107 before they consolidate. He rushed out of the bunker, only to find the sky now buzzing with Luftwaffe fighters. The air superiority they had hoped to temporarily negate was back, now operating directly from the captured airfield. The hasty counterattack by the disorganized Allied units was a disaster, lacking coordination, air cover, and anything resembling sufficient firepower. The remaining Allied troops were shredded by the German fighters and the newly landed mountain troops. By midday, the tide was irrevocably turned. Maleme, the linchpin, was Göring's Barney. Smith watched from a ridge as columns of German troops began marching east, their morale restored, their supplies replenished. He looked at the ammunition manifest, still hopelessly empty, and gave the order. Signal the Navy, Davies, prepare for withdrawal. Tell them we require immediate extraction from the southern coast. Tell them we had perfect intelligence and still managed to lose the island because we ran out of proper tea and bullets at the exact same time. The retreat had begun. It was not a disciplined withdrawal. It was a desperate, embarrassing cross-island sprint towards the coast, driven by the knowledge that they had almost won, only to lose everything in a moment of logistical, caffeinated madness.